true to what you said on paper.
I wish that I could freely dream and be judged from within, hunted by a power that cannot see past my skin. My views are viewed as ignorant, my truth always denied.
All right, welcome back to the second hour of At the Round Table with MAMLEO. I'm your host, Larry Olson, in studio with the rest of the crew. To my right, Helen is back with us today. And the Rhodes Scholar is here today. I think he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's calling his dashiki today. You something you want to tell us about?
I'm an international student representing the foreigners that are coming here, protesting lunatics, idiots.
You come to the right place.
and convicts. Because that was the Immigration Act. They said those people can't come in. The convicts, the lunatics, and the idiots. So
he's going to invoke the War Powers Act.
We should get them out of the White House too.
Well, they're sleeping in the White House.
On the warpath.
They're sleeping in the White House.
Rhodes is working very hard on his own.
I'm telling you, man.
Register to vote, folks.
Yeah, right.
Mail-in ballots. Mail in those things, those votes before the election. Okay, do not make sure you get counted.
Do like Chicago, vote early and often, right?
Yes.
Like back in the old days, right? And to our right over there, he's doing the Trump. Dr. Bradley's over there.
How's everyone doing?
Good morning.
Yeah,
That's the Trump.
Oh, right here. You're gonna have to squeeze like that.
That is the Trump.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hey, sister, how you doing?
Our
Good to
guest
see
has
you again.
arrived.
All right, I want to bestow another title on it.
Yeah,
Just if you want the
fucking hear.
audio to hear you.
Yeah. All right.
And do you have a headset?
No, he's going
Was I supposed
to.
to
Yeah.
bring
No.
my
We're good. We're good. So our guest has arrived. And
Is this being
no.
videotaped?
Yeah. No. You're good. We're gonna get here from.
Oh,
So
there we go.
you're good.
Actually, I don't think any of us need our headsets then.
No.
Well, you still need.
Yeah, he still needs it, but he's just plugging that in. So, again, you're listening at the Round Table with MAMLEO. Our guest has arrived, Rachel Rollins, former district attorney for Suffolk County, former U.S. attorney for. Now, what is the proper
District of
Massachusetts? Because some folks at Eastern, like we've got New York, and that covered Massachusetts and parts of Rhode Island,
No,
or just Massachusetts? So does each state have their own U.S. attorney?
Wonderful question. They do. Some states only have one,
Okay.
and some states have up to four.
Up to
so
four.
New York has the Eastern District, the Southern District, the Western District. I'm pointing in the wrong way, but the Western District and the Northern
It works.
District.
It's opposite.
And they each, their own jurisdiction is their own. So, for
Okay.
example, the Southern District of New York would never weigh in on something that the Western District of New York is doing. Eastern District is Brooklyn. Aren't the Knicks doing amazing? It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Anyway, so Eastern District is Brooklyn. Southern District is Manhattan.
Okay.
Some have three, some have two, and we have one.
All right. Well, we want to welcome you back, folks. Again, you're listening at the Round Table with MAMLEO. Our guest, it's been a while, a former, again, U.S. attorney for Massachusetts, Rachel Rollins, former district attorney for Suffolk County, which pretty much covers Boston, Winthrop, Revere, Chelsea.
Correct. That's it.
That's wow. And some people always thought it covered Lynn, but it stops at the beach. I like that. So it's been a while. This is a perfect example when they say black doesn't crack.
Oh, go on.
Go
on. Well,
you
I'm
haven't-
resting, and
Yeah,
I think
you
I'm
look great.
I was in a chrysalis stage, right?
Okay.
Like I'm about to emerge. But
Okay.
I've been
That
just
cocoon,
percolating.
right?
I
And
know.
you turn into a butterfly.
Yeah, I'm about to.
Okay,
right?
all right.
Yeah, but it's been wonderful to take some time off and focus on my family.
I have to
and
ask you, how were the girls? 'Cause-
They are amazing. So my daughter's 22, just
Wow.
graduated from Syracuse.
Okay.
She was the captain of the track team there. As many of you guys know, I'm the guardian of two of my nieces.
Right, right.
And one of them is a junior. They call it Class 2 at Boston Latin School. And the other one is a 7th grader in Metco in Brookline. So
Nice.
I have done very well in the school category for my family.
Well,
so.
absolutely. Dr. Bradley is a testament to that. You know, he just had one of his daughters
Graduate from med school.
med school.
Yeah.
Med school.
Yeah.
One is an
Chicago.
attorney.
Congrats.
Yeah, one's attorney, and I got one dean at Harvard. And
Oh, I'm sorry.
One's a pastor.
Or, you know what? I take it back. I'm doing okay. Wow.
yeah.
Congratulations.
God is good. God is
No,
good.
but I
is
think
good.
it's a testament to, because I have two daughters. They're in elementary and middle school. I know. I started late, but I
Yeah.
say that because I think folks don't think that we focus on the education in our community, right? And that this is why when I look at what's happening in the school system, particularly here in Boston, it's a travesty, right? Because I didn't hear you mention any of your children in the Boston public school system. I told them that should come with a 51A.
Well, technically, I
Abuse
mean, I laugh when
neglect.
people say, like, Boston Latin School is in the Boston public school system.
Totally different.
No.
Like, let's put Latin up against, you know,
can't.
Tech Boston
Right.
or Madison or
Right.
the Burke. It's not the same. And
Right.
so my niece did go to the Nathan Hale
Okay.
in Roxbury for a few. When I became DA, I had to yank her out of the school system where I own a house, Medford.
Medford,
And
okay.
so she went to the Nathan Hale for a couple of years before she tested into Latin or got
Okay.
into Latin school.
All right. So listen, let's talk a little bit about as well, because we're going to get into, you know, some of the other things there. But when you left the U.S. Attorneys, you went over to Roxbury Community College. There's been a lot going over there. What has been your role over at RCC since you?
Yeah, I will say I resigned as U.S. Attorney
Okay.
and went home and was under a weighted blanket for several months watching Tubi. It got bad, guys. I was
Tubi,
watching Tubi.
yeah.
And Tyler
Streaming
Perry
service,
movies and
yeah.
streaming
Oh, we're just
service.
talking about
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Stop. Tubi is ridiculous.
It-
It's
No,
addictive. It's addictive.
Yeah,
We'll put
that's-
it that way.
Yes.
right?
The beginning.
So, anyways, but after about 6 months, I got a wonderful call from Jackie Jenkins Scott, who was the president at the time, that said, like, okay, enough. What are you doing? Can you help us? We want to create a program for people impacted by incarceration. And I went over in a completely part-time fashion and created a program at RCC that I named the Fort. Where we are,
Named the what?
Right,
The
the Fort.
Does it stand for
F-O-R-T.
something?
Okay, the
Well,
fort.
it's Fort Hill.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I like the sort of military kind of imagery of a fortress, fortitude, effort, discomfort. So there are words with the fort in it that I was thinking all of the times when people are going through trials and tribulations, that is usually when growth happens, right? And although people obviously would prefer, I'm sure, not to go through those trials and tribulations while serving a carceral sentence, it's an opportunity to emerge as a person that has hopefully been thoughtful and and worked hard on themselves. So I created a program that I've been running for the last 2 years.
And is this program open for, like, is there a certain designated population that you're targeting in terms of, like, is it certain residents? Is it across the state? Like,
So-
who is it aimed at?
So I would say my program is for anyone impacted by incarceration. I chose the word impacted because I'm impacted by incarceration. I've never been incarcerated. I don't want to be incarcerated ever, right? But I visit jails, I visit prisons. I have my 2 nieces because of incarceration, mental health issues, substance use disorder of siblings of mine. Anyone's welcome in my program. Most of the people are either trying to get into RCC or already at RCC for an academic or a workforce development program. But I made sure my program was also open to the community. So I get calls from people in Springfield. Now, I say, well, aren't there community colleges in Springfield? But it doesn't matter. If I can help you as far as just having a Zoom call or walking through what are your issues, what would you like to do, how can we get you to however you define success. RCC does not necessarily fund that process with people that aren't their students, but I will sit and meet with hours, take phone calls. We'll try to get you into a program, whether, locally, let's say, it's NECAT or some program where you're going to learn how to get culinary skills. I'll make phone calls. I'll I'll do sort of wraparound services for people. And the thing that's great is I raise all of my own money for my program at RCC.
Oh, wow.
So the state does not pay a dime for the work that I do. So yeah, I would say it would be open to anyone, but mostly it's people in the area of where the college is, but that is not because I preclude people outside of that area.
So
if you told me you had a person that needed my help, I would say, here's my number, have them call me.
I'm glad you highlighted, because I think sometimes people see people like us at this table, right, who are doing okay, and they think we're not afflicted by some of the other things that affect our family, right, and that it brings us into it. So we have a reality. Like, I had two brothers, one who passed away from an overdose, but both of them were incarcerated for some time, and people couldn't understand, well, how does that happen when you're in law enforcement? How does that happen when you reach the pinnacles that you have, Dr. Bradley, and those of us at the table? I'm glad that you're bringing focus to that, because if people think that they see us in our immediate space and think it's been like this all the time, and also I don't think people also know, the Charles Stewart. I think you were the last recipient of that scholarship, right? Because that's
Carol DeMady
Stewart scholarship. Well, that was supposed to be life-changing for people in the community to help with the education, and that didn't develop. Can you talk a little bit about that as well? Because I think that's important, particularly now when we're lacking in the education field.
Yeah, sure. So let me say a few things. If you've been reading the news, the Alvin Campbell trial is happening right now, right? So when I was the DA, we arrested Alvin Campbell, who was, of course, the sibling of our state attorney general, right, Andrea Campbell. I was the Suffolk County DA. We had been investigating. We conducted an arrest. I immediately gave a courtesy call to Andrea Campbell. She was not the AG at the time. But we can see that family members, direct bloodline relatives, can have very different outcomes, right? Now, I don't know enough about Andrea Campbell's family. I can tell you my two parents married each other and have 5 children with each other. Not like my dad has 9 kids over here, my mom has 7 kids over here, they have 2 together, we adopted it. We lived in the same house, and we're raised by the same 2 people in the same places, and have severely different outcomes. And so it's fascinating. You can love people and not agree with the choices that they make. You can show grace and kindness. You can be angry. There's no right way to respond to mental health issues, substance use disorders, and all of the ugly things that come with those things. So.
And that's interesting that you bring up with the Alvin Campbell case. There has been some, I don't know if you've noticed it, whether it be commentary online or like in the papers, where there has been questions about kind of the speed at which the Alvin Campbell case has kind of proceeded through the courts, and whether or not there's been any connection there with, his sister having been part of the city council and now with the AG's office. And now that the trial is proceeding the case, I think it took probably about a year or 2 or so in order for it to kind of really fully develop.
So if I was the DA when he was arrested, I haven't been the DA since 2022. So it took 4 years, right? So I don't know whether online people are saying it's moving too fast or it's moving too slow.
Commentary is that it's moving too slow.
Yeah.
Slowly.
I mean, so look, I have a real problem. I will answer your question about education, I promise. I teach in the Suffolk County House of Corrections in the Peace Unit. Shout out Pastor Hobbs, right? But
Peace.
Yep.
Right, but I teach in the Peace Unit in the House of Corrections. I teach at DYS right over on Harvard Street in the Commonwealth Secure Detention and the Suffolk Detention. So the murder
So that
unit,
on top of
all the RCC work I do, that's part of it, right? Is I teach civics and government and other things.
They keep you busy?
Well, I keep myself busy, right? But I will say this: when I am in the House of Corrections, there are people that have told me that from the time they were arrested to the time they were charged was 5 years. That's not okay, right? There's a Speedy Trial Act, right? That is a requirement.
We're just talking about the Constitution.
Yeah, I love the Constitution, right? So there's a Speedy Trial Act, and that's not speedy. Now, I don't think we need to be Alabama where it's like, you're arrested and we're putting you to death tomorrow.
Right.
Like, you know, like we need a little more time than that.
little in the
No
middle
appeals,
between
right?
that.
But it's not okay that there's a 5-year gap between when you were arrested, you're out on bail, let's say, you turn your life around, let's say, or you finally have a job, you have no violations of any of the conditions of your release. Now, I'm not saying necessarily I think the answer should be so therefore we drop all the charges, but I do, you know, maybe.
Well, I think
but-
definitely in the Alvin Campbell
well,
case,
certainly
there'd be
not
other
Alvin
people that
Campbell.
wouldn't
I'm
say
not,
that.
no, I'm not
yeah.
talking about Alvin. I'm talking about people
In
that were picked up on a charge, and then 5 years later is when the DA's office says, all right, now we're going to hold you accountable for what you did 5 years ago. I think it's important to see what have you done in those 5 years.
Half
now,
a
you're,
decade. That's
you know,
So-
you're still going to be held, certainly when you're raping 8 people. Alvin Campbell wasn't out. He was held pending trial, right? There are people I've met with in the House of Corrections that were out, according to them, right, working, no violations, and then they are now serving some sort of a sentence or awaiting, you know, being transferred to the Department of Corrections. I just think under my administration, we would look at what were you doing? Like if the C in HOC and the C in DOC stand for corrections. So if you have corrected yourself, I can still hold you accountable, but I think you should get credit for the fact that you've done good things, right? Because if we pull you in and make you serve an 18-month sentence, a 3-year sentence, and you have a home, you have a job, you know, apartment, I don't know whether you own or rent, you have good relationships with your kids, and we pluck you out of that, and then you come back and you're unemployed, you're unhoused, you're estranged from your family, but we got our pound of flesh. The answers aren't easy. I'm just saying I think we need to sit back and marinate a little bit and look at each individual. Now, let me be clear. If in the 5 years you were out, you have 6 violations, you picked up 2 new cases, I don't want to hear, like, but I learned my lesson. No, you didn't, obviously, right? But the difference between me and the people who are doing the job now or want it, I will look you dead in your face and say, no, you didn't. You did not learn your lesson. And mom and dad, you know he didn't learn his lesson, or she didn't learn his lesson. Now, this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at this whole person. We're going to make a decision. Do we need 7 years? Do we need 3 years? But it's hard work, but you need to be able to engage with the community, even when it's hard, right? Because they either voted for you or didn't, but their tax dollars pay for us to do our job. Now, let me finish with you. The Carol DeMady
Sound like my
Scholarship,
kids.
right? So here's my thing. I think it is imperative. I'm very honored to have won that award. I think it's important that we call it the Carol DeMady Scholarship because her husband murdered her and her son, Christopher, who lived for 17 days and died after. We're not going to call her Carol Stewart because he killed her, right? So the Carol DeMady Stewart Scholarship, big honor. I was in law school when it happened. It helped me pay for part of my law school tuition, but you know, I do believe we need more scholarships and more opportunities for our young people in schools. Because if you don't hit the lottery and get into a Boston Latin or an O'Brien or a Boston Latin school or academy, I'm sorry, you know, I'm not saying it is an abject failure, but we've read all the articles, right? It's all over the globe. The valedictorians of our Boston public schools aren't doing as well as mid-level students in other public schools in wealthier towns and
They were
cities.
reporting a third of our high school graduates were illiterate.
We can't
And
even
then-
meet the
and then-
minimum requirements.
And then
to-
the Marshall solution
but
was
we're-
to just get rid of F.
F's.
Yeah, it's just it's outrageous, right? And so what I'm saying is, you know, our superintendent of schools makes more than our mayor,
There's- yep.
much more than our mayor, right? And you know, I'll be clear. Like, there are things I definitely agree with Mayor Wu on, but Mayor Wu's kids aren't going to go to the Burke.
No.
Can you put down money on that? Like, however much money,
Well,
I promise you.
We've actually cut the line to even just to get her kids in the daycare at City Hall. It tells you which way she's going.
Yeah, so I wasn't even aware of that. But what I'm saying is just what we need is somebody who's experienced this system. We need people who are, you know, I've talked about this, right? Like, we don't have an elected school committee.
Which people
When
voted
the
to
mayor-
have.
When the mayor was on the city council, the mayor wanted an elected school committee. When the mayor became the mayor, the mayor doesn't want an elected school committee.
Sounds like a Trump move.
Right, but here's what I'm going to say. Point counterpoint, right? Like that's a little, all right, you're ping-ponging here. But I will say in her defense, you know, when we had male mayors and they didn't want an elected school committee, we weren't yelling at them, right? Like I'm not going to hold the first woman. Well, I'm not going to hold the first woman and the first woman of color to a higher standard than Mumbles and Marty Walsh, right? I love Mayor Menino. He's not Mumbles, but Mayor Menino and Marty Walsh. So look, I get it. Leading is hard, right? But what is important is you don't get to flip-flop. And by the way, our public schools are overwhelmingly black and brown, immigrant. Our kids are on 504s and IEPs. They're English language learners, and it's failing, right? And so while her kids are taking Russian math, I'm sure.
And the school that her kids attend is the only school that's getting a lot of money in renovations, whereas the other schools are falling into disrepair.
Yeah, it's just, look, and what I say is if I did that, there would be a satellite office of the Department of Justice plopped in a tent on my front lawn, right?
And that's the interesting part, right? Like, it sounds like from a lot of the work that you've been doing with, you know, at RCC and all the work with, whether it be the Department of Corrections, House Corrections, and this contact, would it be safe to say that on top of your past experience as U.S. Attorney and also as the District Attorney, that's kind of feeding into why you decided to put your hat in the ring as candidate for the District Attorney?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's the point. I am far more qualified today to be the DA than I was in 2018 when I ran, beat 4 other people soundly, and then beat a 5th person that was waiting in the general election. I was learning the job then. I had been an assistant district attorney, but never in Suffolk County. And I had never been, obviously at that time, the DA or the U.S. Attorney. Now I know exactly how the federal government works and should be helping the city of Boston. And I know exactly how the DA's office works and should be doing more in the city of Boston. That's what I would say to that. But I also believe, I love that you are tying all this together. If you have a DA that doesn't understand that failing schools lead to crime, juvenile detention, or juvenile, charges or involvement. It often kids that are in DCF custody, which both of my nieces were, there's like a 7 times more higher likelihood of them being in DYS or juvenile involvement. We have to make sure that these students are getting not only excellent schooling, but they have summer jobs, they have summer opportunities. So when we see the budget, and look, heavy is the crown. It's really hard leading. I am in no way implying like Mayor Wu has an easy job. She doesn't. And it's easy to sit in the stands eating popcorn and saying like, boo, I said boo, but, because you're not running a damn city. I'm in Praise Radio, so I need to be careful. A darned city, right? But what I'm saying to you is, it is important that you can't, out of one side of your mouth, say we're the safest city, major city in the United States of America, and out of the other side of your mouth saying we're cutting all of our youth jobs.
Or the fact that we had, I think, a whole week of shootings and all sorts of violence happening on our streets for, 6-7 days in a row at one point?
I want to weigh in on a couple of things I heard you say, because I think one of the things that you said really struck with me, because I was a police officer for 30-something years. Helen was for a while. Dr. Bradley is equivalent to that. And it was transformative.
What do you mean equivalent? He was a police officer too?
Absolutely. He was deputy superintendent.
Well, so he was also I'm like,
right,
equivalent.
No, I'm talking about in years.
Oh, years.
I
thought you meant
No.
I think
he's definitely
I think we're at about
100 years. Right.
We never were police officers.
Well,
I mean, maybe.
I say that because when you were talking about the young people, right? I had a kind of a police, not say mentality, because I never felt like, it was just going out there, charge. But when I started working in the schools, it changed my whole perspective of working with young people and young minds, right? And getting back, because now I'm looking at it from a different approach. And so I saw, and then being able to translate that to some of my other colleagues it was helpful because they're like, oh, okay, you're in there every day, you're dealing with these young people, and we arrive and we see what's happening in the moment, but we don't have the whole backstory, right? As you said, that kid has no home, that has no structure, there's nothing helping them out there, right? So this school is their safe haven, but it doesn't mean that they don't come there with that baggage that most people aren't aware of, or that they're an IEP, right? Because we just see them in the street and they look quote unquote normal, right? So I'm glad you flagged that, because life's experiences definitely take us down a road of where we can make a difference or not, and so we need to take light of that and not just say, well, it's just their behavior that we need to look at what's in front of us and not the whole picture of
And
how we got there.
I've worked with doing financial literacy with the families and stuff. If you're just working with the kids, you're not working with the family, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. Because if the family is your first teacher,
right?
Your first everything is the family.
Well, and that's why I was glad in some police departments are brought in social workers, right? Because that's really what a lot of the work that law enforcement was doing, but we weren't trained for that, so we don't know how to deal with some of the emotional things that someone else. That's all they focused on in school. We focused in arrest, the laws, when we go through the academy. We spend very little time on, what is the real root of the problem, and then so combining those two, we've always kind of been these territorial, it's us against them type of mentality.
What's interesting too, so I have 4 licenses. I was laughing the other day. I have a driver's license, I have a law license, I have a license to carry, and I'm a licensed foster parent. And so not only because I'm a kinship foster parent to my 2 nieces, I then took the MAP class, the foster parents class, and I'm an emergency and a hotline home for the Department of Children and Families. Okay. So whenever there's an emergency in the middle of the night and children need a place to stay, they can stay at my home for the evening. Now I have my daughter and my 2 nieces, so I'm not doing long-term care because I'm like, I got too many damn kids already. but I will say I did want to open my house to young people. In particular, I'm mostly interested in like kids that are 9 and under. I think are best suited in my house because we have 13, 17, and now 22 for the summer with my daughter. But I will tell you, many of those kids are pulled from their home in the evening because of some sort of crisis and then are picked up and brought to school the next day, right? So what I love about my house is it's enough to have siblings, right? So on the worst night of your life, if there's an arrest in your house or a raid or somebody overdoses or you're removed because DCF makes a determination that there's, abuse or neglect in your home such to a level that you need to be physically removed, I don't want that worst night of your life or day of your life to also include you being separated from your 2 siblings. I can only take up to, I think, 3 in my house. But I will tell you, Larry, like, these kids go back to school, and if they don't get the, school psychologist or someone else, a social worker, who are they telling that Rachel's, family got raided last night or she was left alone somewhere or what have you? You need a team around these kids. And I was blessed with parents that in 4th grade, I left public school and went to private school. And I can tell you the services you get in private school, or when I look at my niece at Boston Latin School and my niece at the Lincoln School in Brookline, and I teach at the Dearborn STEM, which is a great school, but there are different levels of involvement, right?
Well, to that point, I was in Brockton. I do a lot of work out there with the schools, and they, which surprised me, they have healthcare teachers, right? Which Boston, we eliminated a lot of the things that deal with the social problems, the social baggage that a lot of our kids have, and we've replaced it with an MCAS, which we're not doing, and now we're removing that because we won't even want to find out how bad our kids are really doing, right?
And part of what I teach, I'm teaching criminal, early college. I teach an early college course at Dearborn STEM, I said, and it's, Intro to Criminal Justice. I teach civics. Like people, I'm old. You know what time is it? I'm officially old. Right now I realize at 55 years old, like, I ran for office at 46 years old, I think. And I had to go back to like Schoolhouse Rock to be like, how does a bill become a law? I mean, I would give myself a C+,
what's your function?
right? But I'm serious. Like, my parents understood civics. Their parents understood civics.
Yeah.
We don't understand the three branches of government.
Right.
We don't know the amendments to the Constitution.
And that's
I
why
don't
it
need
gets
you to be a constitutional scholar.
Right.
But I want you
The
to
basics.
understand
The basics.
the basics, right?
Right.
Would you say that there's I read somewhere that your father was he a Boston Public School teacher and then also a corrections officer, one or the
Yes.
other? So would you say that partially too kind of shaped some of your ideas and like your values with regards to education, corrections?
For sure. I
How
mean,
did that kind of shape your
My dad and
relevance of
mom.
public service?
My dad was interested in becoming a police officer. He was a corrections officer for a few years. And my mom was worried about, like
Safety.
all of the harm and safety that could happen. And he went into Boston. He went into Boston Public Schools. And then my mom is a registered nurse, and she was a school nurse. So between them,
Oh, so
they
they
have
both worked in the
60
public school
years of Boston Public School experience. They've taught in over 30 of the Boston Public Schools.
Oh, wow.
My dad was in the, obviously, Boston Teachers Union. My mom was in two unions, the Nurses Union and the Teachers Union. So yeah, education is super important
So
to us.
I can see the conversation with your dad, who was a teacher in the correction office. He said, "Hey, Rachel, either you're going to school or you're going to jail." So let's grab this call. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning, everyone. This is T. Michael of the People's Academy.
Good morning,
Good
T.
morning.
Michael.
Good
Morning,
morning.
T. Can I put it on?
Can you?
I had a quick
Is this-
question for the guest.
Thank you, my dear.
Let me take this.
Good to see you on the back on the
Hold
spot.
T-
Quick question. This is not a commitment question, but it's a
I can
simple
actually hear him
question.
through Willie's.
If and hopefully when in office, back in office, can the People's Academy's team get an opportunity to sit with you and talk possible partnership,
Yep, I can
us
hear.
working together?
Thank you.
For sure, yeah. I've had the privilege of going to see. Every time I say T. Michael Thomas, I think of Miami Vice.
Oh wow!
Like Tubbs.
Michael
Oh,
Thomas.
Crocodile.
Way back.
I used to love that, but it's just because it's Thomas,
Yeah.
or Michael Thomas. or whatever. So how are you, sir? First
Philip
of all,
Michael
and
Thomas.
second of all, he does really great work. I've had the privilege of going to see. I'm looking at a bracelet that
Oh,
Larry's.
Larry
Wait,
shined
wait.
it up
Yeah.
for today.
No, I had him
Hey.
shine it up. I went over and got it repaired the other day. Yeah.
So yes, I'd love to talk about partnerships. I think we've spoken before. There's funding opportunities that the Suffolk County DA's office gives small grants or could give larger grants. But I think when I am fortunate enough to hopefully regain that position, that there's going to be, I understand the job now. I don't think there's going to be a ramping up process. I've gone through all of that and done all the administrative work to get the office to a place where it is running very well. And this is not a response to your comment, T. Michael Thomas, but I did not inherit the office that Kevin Hayden inherited. I inherited the office from Dan Conley, where the top 11 people in the office were white. There were almost no women. They were all qualified, don't get me wrong, but they certainly did not reflect Suffolk County. Barely any of them lived in Suffolk County. They certainly didn't look like the homicide victims or the Part 1 crime victims, the shooting victims, etc. We were not in compliance with the Equal Pay Act, so women weren't getting paid as the same as men, right? There were no administrative functions. I inherited an office that was not functioning at the level of 2019 as it should have. I worked really hard to get that office up to date with things and have functions in place. And so that's a long way of saying I believe the current administration has benefited greatly because that DA was able to come in and just get to work, not have to do all of the administrative scaffolding that I was. So I will say, T. Michael, once if I'm privileged enough to gain people's votes and succeed and get in office, absolutely we can have a conversation, or I would say continue talking, because I've spoken with you recently about the work that you do, and I've gone over and looked at that work through Fabian and others putting me in touch with you.
And that's actually an interesting, good segue too. I mean, when you talk about inheriting an office, right? So there are a couple cases that have come up that are quite in the news. We've been talking about earlier this morning in an earlier segment with regards to the Officer O'Malley case, right? And how the DA's office has been handling that. I'm sure we've seen some of your comments. For example, I'm curious with regards to what's come out about in the news about Michael Proctor, former Massachusetts State Police trooper, and his
to that,
comments.
There's a quote here you're saying, it's just from you, says, they're quoting you, said, if I had handled the Karen Reed trials and the suicide of Sandra Birchmer the way my former colleague did,
Quote
suicide, right?
A lot of questions.
I would have been fitted with an iron scold's bridle, and goes on. What did you mean by that?
So, iron scold's bridles were like an ancient torture device for women that spoke too much. It's like a metal mask that pulls your mouth open, and then you're paraded through a square. Have you watched Game of Thrones? Did you see when Cersei was like walked through and shame throwing stuff? So it's just men are able to behave badly. Sorry, gentlemen, right? And you're like, not
in my house, but
no, but all right, because you have a wife that knows what she's talking about, right? But I'm just saying, like, we have sheriffs that have drunk driving charges. We have DAs that have ethics violations and fines. We have a president who's a convicted felon. Absolutely. We have,
we also just recently had, we have administrative staff within Wu's administration that had assault and battery charges and so forth, I believe it was.
And are just brought back to work, right? So spare me with your righteous indignation, right? Spare me. We have a governor that just appointed this man, Plattner, in Maine, who has the Nazi tattoo
endorsed
and sexually harasses and or possibly assaults his interns on his staff.
I believe 7 women, have come up. Forward.
But you know what? I find his behavior disgusting. But he has my endorsement. Like, this is what the Democratic Party is. This is why we're failing right now. Because we are a party of hypocrites who love pointing at the Republicans. But you know what they do? They line up. We are hypocritical and infighting and crabs in a barrel and pulling each other down, and then and we're sore losers, right? Like, as a former athlete, I'm like, shut up. We lost. Okay, are you in the gym? Are you in the gym? Are you in the gym? No, you aren't. You're not on the team anymore. We're like, we need to make some real changes if we are going to change. Right?
But I don't think any side has a monopoly on, like I said, because you look in Texas. But I'm glad you said it, because I want to pivot a second here about the voting, because we talk a lot about voting.
But wait a sec. Let's say Texas is Paxton, right? Who just beat Cornyn, in the U.S. Senate race. Paxton was he had state securities fraud charges that he was indicted for, right? He was dismissed after pretrial diversion. So this is who gets pretrial diversion. This white rich man paid a $300,000 restitution amount, ethics training, and performed some community service, and is now free and clear to continue on. And he had impeachment. He was acquitted. So I want to make sure we say that right. But that's who is endorsed by the president, right? Well, so I don't want to hear people...
No, but also look at the blanket pardons for all of those, the insurrectionists, right? Yeah. And so then when people come after folks for, say, saying they're too soft on crime for someone who's committed an infraction here, I said this to Dr. Brill, I've said this numerous times, I don't think I could police today the way I used to, where I'm now having to look at things and say, well, wait a minute, how can I arrest this person that looks like me and someone that doesn't look like them gets a pass for the same thing?
This is why you need, Larry, this is why you need written policies. Right? So I don't care if you don't like my policies. At least you can hold up a sheet of paper and say, Rachel Rollins, I hate you. Look what you said. Right now, there are no written policies. We don't have an officer-involved shooting policy in the Suffolk County DA. There's no written policy.
You mean
Find
the Suffolk
it.
County DA's office?
In the Suffolk County DA's office. Find it. Pull up your... I guarantee you, if
Was there one under your administration?
Of course there was. We had a discharge integrity team. Us. ourselves, right? Where we had a community member, we had, if it was a Boston police shooting, we had a Mass State Trooper that sat on my discharge integrity team. If it was a state trooper shooting, we pulled a Boston police officer on the team. We had internal people, we had a retired judge, we had a criminal defense attorney that I ultimately had to make the decision, but all of the matters were presented to them. So I think what the police are mad about, I'm not a police, right? We have plenty here to yell at me if I say something different, but I've seen what Larry Calderon has said, right? The reason they're mad about O'Malley is two things. First of all, they think he shouldn't have been charged at all. I don't know whether, obviously, right? That's one space. I'm not going to comment on that. I think they are enraged that this DA had the gall after 8 American calendar days, 8 calendar days, 2 of which were a weekend, 1 of which was St. Patrick's Day, to say out loud, after a thorough investigation, not my words, the DA's words, I've decided to charge this case. So he charged the case by complaint, which is an affidavit and a complaint that the DA approves the probable cause, as opposed to going to the grand jury. And as progressive as people think I am, anytime a police officer is charged for on-duty conduct, I believe that officer should be placed in front of the grand jury. Because unlike me, Rachel Rollins, if I were somebody who had an illegal firearm, wasn't licensed, was a prohibited individual, and shot somebody, we charge by complaint all the time for murder, every day, right? But my job as a criminal or somebody who shot somebody is not in law enforcement. I don't have a service weapon. Officer O'Malley was called to a crime scene because of a 911 call about a carjacking that happened. Now, it wasn't armed, but it was a carjacking. And he made a split-second decision that you can question if you want to, but he was certainly within the scope of his employment to do so, right? So I'm not talking about off-duty conduct. You're at a strip club, somebody steals your gun, all that nonsense.
She pointed at you.
Excuse me, I'm aware. And I was the DA. I'm like, you were where? Okay, enough. Right, that's off-duty conduct. I'm talking about this should have been brought to a grand jury. 1. 2, a lot of people don't understand. The DA controls the grand jury. So anyone saying, oh, well, we would have been in the queue. No, you wouldn't have. If I were the DA, I would have said, this happened on, let me make sure I get my facts right. Death was on Wednesday, March 11th. The DA stood up in front of the Roxbury Division of the Boston Municipal Court on Thursday, March 19th, and said, after a thorough investigation, I've decided to charge. The police, not Rachel Rollins, have said this is performative. You're up for re-election. This is why you're doing this. And then he was indicted 70 days later. I would have heard about the death on Wednesday. I would have assembled the discharge integrity team on Thursday, March 12th. I would have had a quick presentation and determined whether or not we were going to present to the grand jury or not. I would have then wiped everything out of the grand jury. Anything that was pending in the grand jury. Nobody gets to tell the DA that reports to the DA, hey, I have a, you're
saying like no, nothing else will be on the grand jury.
Nothing
calendar.
else is going to be in front of that grand jury. And we have multiple grand juries in Suffolk County. So I could have left the other grand jury up, doing everyone else, and said, get your hands off of this grand jury. All they are going to be doing is hearing about Officer O'Malley. I would have called Commissioner Cox and said, I want him off the street. I want his gun. I mean, his gun was already taken because, as you guys know, the fitted policy, right, which we're going to talk about in a second, on the Boston Police Department side, this was a red team fitted process because it was a fatal, right? I don't know whether it was team 1 or team 2. I don't know who the commander was of that team.
Well, we know that actually Sergeant Detective Richie Lewis was the one who ended up being the sergeant for the fitted team that was called out.
Okay, so Richie Lewis is the...
Which he has his own issues, I'm sure you're aware of.
Let me hear.
Yeah, okay, so what I would have done was the fitted team is doing what they're doing, but remember, in Suffolk County and Massachusetts, all of these people Nobody is allowed to investigate a homicide without the DA's approval. So all this nonsense going on in Norfolk County right now, where Morrissey has had Proctor would have been fired immediately, right? And I probably would have said the Karen Reed trial is a dumpster fire.
So let me interject you for just 1 second. I don't want to spoil on your flow. Who gets to? Does the DA's office have any input in who is on the fitted team?
So I don't get to say who's on the fitted team. What I get to say is
who decides that compliment?
Right.
No. The fitted team is Boston Police.
Okay.
But
So that the public knows.
But anyone in the homicide unit, right? So I would argue now, though, anyone handling a homicide for the Boston Police Department or the Mass State Police Department, I would interview as the DA, right? So wait a sec. You have seen Dave Fredette at the Boston Police Department defer to Kevin Hayden on all of this O'Malley stuff. The DA controls all homicides. Then you know what? The DA needs to know who's on the fitted team, red and blue. Now, I might say, ultimately, they're all fantastic, that's fine. But when I was DA, anyone on my homicide team in BPD or at the Mass State Police, I personally interviewed. And my team tried to go crazy about, no, Ed Zabin makes these. You know what Ed Zabin's never done? Run for officer one. If I put Ed Zabin up in a lineup, I don't think any of you could pick him out. He was the homicide chief, and now he's Kevin Hayden's first assistant. Ed Zabin doesn't get to make decisions about people he's known forever and worked homicide cases with. By the way, some of whom retired are the reason I'm overturning all of these homicides, right? For unconstitutional conduct, etc. So I looked at each of them. I demanded that I get access to their IA or personnel files, right? So this Proctor stuff going on in Norfolk, I want to look in people's eyes. And I said to them, you're white. Why do you want to work in the homicide? Is this about you or is this about the Suffolk County homicides? Because they're not happening in West Roxbury, right? They're not happening, or if they do, it's the son of a father who he adopted that, it's an interfamily situation that's terrible. Or I believe McLaughlin happened and it might have happened in West Roxbury.
Well, you also have Chelsea and Everett and Revere too.
We have Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere, right?
Sorry,
and so no, that's fine. But Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere don't investigate their own homicides. Okay, the Boston Police, Worcester Police, Springfield Police investigate their own homicides. Everywhere else, it's the Mass State Police. So with Mass State Police that we know are 90% male, right, and and white, right, very few women. I want to sit with you and say, why do you want to work in the homicide unit? Is this about you, or is this about in your career trajectory, or is this about solving our homicides, right? Do you have any black friends? Right? Like, tell me about why. How are we going to believe you when you are knocking on our door 2 days after a homicide asking questions? When you don't live in our community, you don't interact with our community, right? Like, the Boston Police, this is back in 2018, 2019, so I'm not talking about them right now. I'm talking about when I was DA. It is important that we make sure that people are culturally competent. Now, we know this. There are black people that are not culturally competent about their own black community, or Asian people or whatever, right? That you might be like, I want to revoke this person's card of entry, the race draft that Dave Chappelle did, right? Like, can I trade you a this for a that, right? But I'm just saying, and there are white people that are incredibly culturally competent. So it's not necessarily about race. It's about, do you have compassion? Do you come into our community for positive things and not only negative things? Those are the type of things that I was sort of talking about. I think to finish my point, Larry, about O'Malley, I think if DA Hayden had brought it to the grand jury, and remember, the grand jury would indict a ham sandwich because it's only probable cause.
They did in D.C.
It's not only,
the subway guy.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. And had a grand jury expedited, and instead of 8 days, let's say in 23 days, returned an indictment. Larry Calderon still might have been out there yelling, but he couldn't have been yelling about that this is political, or maybe he might have, but then he would have had to yell at 23 individuals from Suffolk County who secretly.
So we've got a few minutes left. So also, then correct me if I'm wrong. Then you said there's only a few police departments that are authorized to conduct homicide investigations.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, as well, right? You can supersede the investigation. Like if it's a homicide in Boston, can the DA's office assign the state police to investigate that rather than the Boston police?
So,
because I know there's been controversy in the past.
So it has happened in that. So, for example, we had a horrific domestic violence double homicide, where a mother threw both of her children off of a garage,
right, remember that,
and then jumped to her death. Obviously, we weren't going to necessarily charge anyone with that, but that happened on MBTA property. And so the T wanted to, they were involved in the investigation, but we had the Boston police look into it. I believe the DA controls all homicide investigations from death to sentencing. So if somehow a DA said, I no longer have faith in this unit to do something, they can control who is conducting those investigations.
So it's interesting that
I just want to ask another question. So even though as a DA you can present a case or what have you, when you get in front of a judge, can the judge now just dismiss it or disregard it?
No. So we present. Remember, and I'll come back and explain this, or all your police officer friends can. So the grand jury is a fascinating place. There's no judge there. There's no defendant there. There's no defense attorney there. There is a prosecutor standing in front of 23 citizens of Suffolk County and just telling them their version, our version as prosecutors, of what we believe happened. We don't have to put the whole case in. We just have to put enough for probable cause. Very good defense attorneys can dismantle grand jury indictments. There have been few times where there have been motions to dismiss the indictment that a defense attorney has filed and a judge has granted that. It's very, very rare. Or what defense counsel does is says, but you didn't tell the grand jury about all of the bias, that this police officer has, right? So Proctor goes before the grand jury in the Karen Reed trial. And that's why I tweeted, Karen Reed just filed a 1983 claim in federal court against Proctor, the House defendants, the city of Canton, the Mass State Police, because all of these terrible things that were going on should have been disclosed to her. All of his racist text, all of these other things that were happening. So I think it's fascinating to me that she's charged malicious prosecution, fabrication of evidence, and a due process violation under the 14th Amendment. She charged civil conspiracy, First Amendment retaliation, and the hurdle she's going to have to clear is qualified immunity, right? So it protects government officials from civil liability, but she's going to prove that their actions were so deliberately unconstitutional that any reasonable officer or official would have known that it was inappropriate.
So in a case like that, where you have Michael Proctor's, and we've talked about this earlier on, where he's not the only one, and there are certainly officers like that with the Boston Police Department. Say in a case like that, and knowing with DA Hayden, knowing that you got into trouble in the past with revealing the fact that DA Hayden had tried to cover up for a couple of MBTA transit officers that he was trying to cover for in the district attorney's office. In your case now, would you say in the O'Malley case, there's been debate over whether or not the video should be released and how to deal with that? Would you be? What is your 2 cents on that?
We need the 1 minute version.
So I think really quickly, I would absolutely. Well, let me not bury the lead. I think O'Malley's going to be found not guilty. Period. End of story. I think that the mistakes that have been made already with respect to the science, and there's as you guys know better than anyone, the Force Science Institute does all of this analysis on reaction times and the difference between the camera eye and the human eye and whatever. I'm not bearing the lead. That has nothing to do with what I think about Stephenson King or not, but I think mistakes were made, and I think ultimately O'Malley has an exceptional defense team. They're going to pick this apart, and it's going to be like Aaron Hernandez. Right?
So what do you think about officers like Proctor? If you came across officers like that with, say, the Boston Police Department, the Massachusetts State Police,
I
that you deal
have.
with?
So when I become DA again, we're going to start doing case audits, right? We have too many cases, James Lucian and Sean Ellis, which were two gentlemen that I exonerated as DA. Both had John Brazel as their Boston police detective. We have Daniel Flynn, Mr. Terrible Photo Array from the Boston Police Department. Both were involved in Barry Camara's and Robert Foxworth's exonerations. And ADA James Larkin, who was corrupt, right, was also involved in that case. I'm going to start pulling things together and start pulling threads. And when we see corrupt police officers, we need to go back in and look into all of their cases. That's the only way the community believes that we are not completely full of beep, right?
All right. We've got to let you go. We've got to definitely have you come back.
Yes.
And follow up on this, because there's a lot more that
I definitely have more
people
questions.
We're just talking about how do we get those elected into office that are going to hold people accountable.
All right. Dr. Bradley?
Be blessed. Be blessed.
Be blessed. I love it.
Amen.
Thank you.
I got unreleased songs for days, they don't want it. Eat any MC in the game. It ain't a challenge if your music reflects who you are, then you's a coward. I can see through the lies, you ain't living what you spitting. If your money's so long, while your dog's in prison. While your baby mom's stripping, while your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'. You ain't gotta lie to me to sell me a track. You ain't gotta rock fake jewels or walk around strap. I respect artists getting money, but love them for spitting crack. And the fact that one track can move a family out the trap. It's a dream for us lost souls brought up in the mix. I'm motivated by the artists coming out in my midst. And the artists that paved the way when I didn't exist. Music's a skyscraper, I'm just trying to add a couple bricks.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard. Hustle real hard, hustle real hard. Hustle real hard, hustle so if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog. Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard.